Hello and welcome back to the channel, Airbus What's It Doing Now, and today's briefing is a heads up for the Autothrust briefing, which is going to be coming out in the next few days. It's been stifling hot, and I prefer to do these briefings on the whiteboard, but you know, I've stood up there for 5 minutes and sweat is just pouring off me, and it's quite unsightly. And even doing this now, sat in my chair in my office, I'm already sweating. So it's very difficult to get any more than 5 or 10 minutes to actually prepare any elements of this. So it's taking a little bit longer than I wanted, but that's not a bad thing. It's going to give you the opportunity to ask any questions, and maybe you can tell me some areas that you want to cover in particular. So do put that in the comments below. So what am I going to cover in this then? So we'll have a look at a reminder of the thrust lever positions. We'll have a look at the range for two engine and single engine operations, just where those gates lie. We'll have a look at manual thrust as well. That is when the auto thrust is not armed, or when it's armed and not active. So when it's out of those gates, whether it's above the gates or below the gates, because that has different consequences. We're then going to move on to arming and disarming conditions. So what's required to arm the auto thrust? What do we need? And also the disconnecting or disarming conditions, and whether we use the instinctive disconnect buttons on the auto thrust levers, or we press the FCU. So the instinctive disconnect being a sort of the standard disengaging method, and the FCU being the non-standard. I think that's an important one to look at, because the non-standard disarming of the auto thrust doesn't have to be the FCU push button. It could be losing an auto thrust channel, which we know can happen when we lose flight management guidance, when we lose an FMGC, or we lose an autopilot and an auto thrust channel. So that's going to be well worth a review. Then we're going to move on to the auto thrust modes. We'll have a look at the FMA, what we're likely to see, and the various presentations there. And we'll also have a look at some cautions as well. We'll then move on and a review of alpha floor, because that is, after all, an auto thrust protection. And we'll also have a look at ground speed mini as well. We may as well throw that in there. Now, both of these were covered by separate briefings, and I will put a link in there in the video, and if I remember, also into the description as well, so that you can look at those areas in a lot more detail, because I cover them. Alpha floor in the flight controls. I know it's not a flight control protection, but we do talk about it. And the ground speed mini was a whole separate subject. But I go over those briefly, but I'll give you the links on those in more detail. Then we'll have a look at the FMA in more detail. We'll have a look at the references to the first and the fifth column, and what we're likely to see, and the presentations and what they mean. And the last thing we'll look at is the go around soft function, what it's available on, how we get into it, and some of the functions associated with that, and how it's achieved, and what it looks like for us, and when we'd need to do it. Good. Okay, so expect that over the next few days. I hope this temperature gets a little bit easier for everybody, because it's very difficult to do anything at the moment, least of all sleep. And I'll look forward to getting this out to you very soon. Keep the plates spinning, keep safe, and I'll talk soon.